Welcome to the Making Hay podcast with Marcia Miller from RFG Advisory. In this podcast, we help veterinarians, from new graduates to seasoned practitioners, navigate the sometimes tricky waters of personal finance. We all know the saying, making hay while the sun shines. As cheesy as it sounds, it represents a lot of what we help people do in their financial lives and businesses. We know each of you faces unique challenges, and we're here to offer advice tailored just for you, anchored in service, stewardship, and a genuine understanding of your profession. Join Marcia Miller, your guide on this journey. Marcia has spent over 25 years in financial services, and her passion is helping vets like you get a handle on your finances. Tune into each episode as we meet at the intersection of veterinary practice and financial management. With help from expert guests and insights from Marcia's own experience, we're going to tackle your biggest financial questions head on.
And welcome to the Making Hay podcast with Marcia Miller. Marcia, how you doing today?
Hey, good morning. I am doing perfectly well. How are you?
I'm right fine.
Good.
Or as my dad might say, once upon a time, I'm just copacetic.
There you go.
So what do you have going for us today?
Well, today we are diving into the wild world of student loans and student loan debt. Yeah. So a lot of people really avoid talking about it. A lot of veterinarians don't want to talk about it. Why? Because it's overwhelming.
Sure.
It's like this cloud of debt that's hanging around. So we're gonna dive in and talk about it with Matt today.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I guess this is one of those things nobody wants to talk about, but probably once you do talk about it, it's not as scary.
Well, that is absolutely the truth, and it's just people think it's so overwhelming they don't want to deal with the reality. So they get into this anxiety avoidance mode, I guess is the way to say it. So we want to kind of get some
pretend it's not there. Let's just pretend it's not there.
It'll go away if I don't pay attention.
Exactly.
It usually doesn't.
No, usually I've never seen any that just sort of went away by itself. No.
Exactly. So Matt's I've met him before, but he is an advisor on my team. We work hand in hand. He is awesome. So Matt, let's kick this off.
Yeah, glad to be back on the show.
Yeah. So when do you think that veterinarians should start thinking about student loans?
Yeah, that's a good question. As financial advisors, we get this question a lot, and it's usually kind of in the later stage when veterinarians have a practice or just started as an associate and say, hey, I've got the student loan debt. What do I need to do? And really, planning for student loan debt should start before you even start school. Just having a number of how much support you need. And that comes from if you have any scholarships, grants, if you have a 529 plan, help from your family or savings, just having a bottom line and know what kind of support you need. And then next, you would just weigh the cost of tuition, looking at in-state and out-of-state tuition. Out-of-state tuition is significantly more expensive than in-state, so it's good to be mindful of that. And just looking at Auburn's vet school, out-of-state tuition is about $21,000 a year more expensive. And so that's something to be mindful. So over 4 years, that's getting close to $100,000 extra just for out-of-state.
Big consideration. Very big.
Very big.
Yeah. I think choosing between in-state and out-of-state tuition is like a bit like picking toppings for your pizza.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you go with the local cheese or do you go and get the exotic imported stuff, right?
Right. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. States all have different type of residency requirements as well as schools. So it can be overwhelming. And then the last thing is just knowing the different types of loan types when applying. And that's also another few toppings added to the pizza.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Matt, I know you're in your early 30s and very early 30s.
Right on the dot.
Right on the dot, 31, right? So you're a more recent grad. And so what's your personal story? I mean, what have you experienced, yourself or your families? Like, what are the joys and sorrows of student loan debt that you went through, or did you somehow manage to escape unscathed, or like tell us a little bit about what you did. I mean, you're not a veterinarian, but like you're a recent grad. So tell us about your story.
No, that's a good question. So I was very fortunate, had support from family for my undergrad, but I knew I was wanting to go to grad school. And so that's one thing they said, like, you're on your own for grad school. So when I was looking out of undergrad, when I was looking for jobs, I had 2 offers out of school. One was a little bit higher salary and one was a little bit lower. And the one with the lower salary, I was actually able to negotiate to have them pay for my school, which ended up saving me around $35,000 a year for my grad school, which is really, really special.
Huge. Yeah, that is. Very
on the other side of that, I've had some family friends that have been a little unfortunate. One big problem about student loans is the money is pretty easily accessible. And so it's very easy, if you don't know your bottom line, to take out more than you need. So you can able to take out the max loan, and had some family friends take some pretty exotic trips with the student loan money and come out of school with close to $400,000 of student loan debt.
So tempting.
Which is a mountain of debt to crawl out of school.
I know, because the mindset is like, I'm going to be sacrificing. I'm going to go to vet school. I'm going to be a doctor when I get out of this. I'm going to be making a lot of money. I can always kick the can down the road and enjoy my life now while I'm young. Right. And
exactly. It's tempting.
It is. And obviously we think that's a mistake. So don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't be tempted. Yeah. And, back to your point about you were fortunate enough to get your grad school paid for. I think in the veterinary space, there's a shortage still of veterinarians. We've been talking about that a lot.
Yep.
And so I'm seeing more and more job offers where they are actually, practices are picking up that debt or some of the debt if a veterinarian signs on for X number of years and things like that. So I think those are good considerations.
Absolutely. And that's a great benefit. I've seen anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a year in additional payment support from employers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's money that's not coming out of your pocket to pay back the loans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you if there was any embarrassing stories that you knew of yourself or family or friends that from taking out student loans, but I think you kind of nailed that one with taking trips with their money.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most embarrassing is, your student loans are to cover your tuition and to cover your living expenses. Taking a trip to Italy for a month is not necessary living expenses. And it's definitely not, while it's a great experience, it's definitely not worth it going into more debt to experience that.
Yeah. I have a quick story of a friend of mine's child. Yeah. So they got the max student loans as well. And the parents had given the student, their child, a used car, that they had been driving through high school and taking to college. And it was a perfectly capable car, perfectly capable to have a lot more miles. And her kid went out, unbeknownst to the parents, and bought a new car with their student loan money.
Wow.
And, it's just like we've got to learn delayed gratification, and not to make those mistakes, not beating anyone up if anyone's done any of these things, but again, addressing it and coming up with a game plan to get it paid off. And to get it paid off sooner than later does bring tremendous peace of mind. So yeah, but I don't know if there's any other stories you'd like to share. That's mine.
No, that's a good one. I think as millennials, especially the younger vets, I think you said it, delayed gratification. We want everything now, and we want to experience these great things like new cars and nice trips, and seeing people make sacrifices on the other end and seeing their student loan payments of upwards of $1,500 a month. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Just delay the gratification for a few more years.
Exactly. Well, now that we've covered the basics of planning and are thinking about it or starting to think about it, let's dive into the nitty gritty of the different student loan types. What types? Yeah. What are the different types?
Yeah, so just at a high level, there's 2 different types. One are government student loans, and then the other are private student loans. So the government loans are subsidized by the government to offer a lower interest rate for students. And then the private loans are offered by lending institutions, which typically offer higher rates. And for those that don't qualify for for the government loans or go over those borrowing limits set by the government.
So do you know what the current rates are?
Yeah, so for the government loans, it's 4.5%, around that range, and then for the private loans, it's around 8%. So
Wow.
that's a big difference, almost double to go for the private lending.
Yeah. And that can be very overwhelming. I mean, it's a lot to consider for a student.
Right.
You know,
And
all they're doing is looking to, further their education, and they have this whole overwhelming debt thing to consider. So it's a lot.
yeah, and there is some good news for veterinary students. So certain healthcare professions and veterinaries is included in that. The max loan for the government subsidy is 224,000. So with proper planning, that should cover the bulk of your tuition and living expenses.
What is the average student loan for a veterinarian now coming out of school?
So we've seen anywhere between 2 and 300,000, depending on in-state, out-of-state tuition, if they're having any help, scholarships, which can be a little daunting. I mean, starting day one with a $300,000 shadow over you. So yeah, that's a lot.
It sure is. It's a whole lot. I mean, luckily, we're seeing veterinarian income is increasing.
hmm
So we know a lot of the starting salaries are a lot more. So, maybe instead of looking first at what can I buy to get the lifestyle I went to school and sacrificed all these years, which we totally understand, wanting to live a great life, but maybe, it's really important to make sure you're in check with your budget and have a game plan for paying the debt off and still living your best life and doing the things you want to do. But it's all a balance.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I mean, there is some good news to coming out of school with that much debt, especially for veterinarians. A recent study showed that the debt to income ratio for veterinarians coming out of vet school, completing their residency and being a first year associate, the debt to income ratio is 1.3 to 1 compared to a national average of 3 to 1. So what that means is, yes, we are coming out of school with a good bit of debt, but we are seeing higher starting salaries, which is lowering our debt to income ratio. So that is some good news. That, I mean, we're not having to work 3, 4, 5 years just to pay off that figure.
wow, that is good news.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's still like a big monkey on your back to have the
Absolutely.
student loan debt, and it can be overwhelming. So what's the best thing a veterinarian can do right now?
Yeah, I think the best thing the veterinarians can do right now is to have a plan. And there's several steps to having a plan. So the first thing is negotiations, and this is a skill that's not really taught in school. I mean, there's several classes you can take or YouTube videos you can watch, but the power of negotiation is a good skill to have. And what that does is it lowers your debt to income ratio. So the higher salary you negotiate coming out of school, knowing your value, the lower that ratio is. And a story of that is how I mentioned when I graduated, I took a little bit lower of a salary to work for a company that would pay for my school. And so that saved me around $70,000 over a 2-year time period.
Yeah, and like we already mentioned, there is a shortage of veterinarians. Use that to your advantage.
Absolutely.
When you're negotiating to start working at a practice or a clinic or a hospital, make sure that you're thinking about that and not just, oh my gosh, I'm lucky to have a job. No, they're begging for you to have a job. You are in the ball is in your court all day long as a veterinarian.
Absolutely.
So
it is.
take advantage of that. Matt, I know that you and I work with a lot of veterinarians and have a lot of conversations on a daily basis. And, not just, this kind of conversation has been around veterinary students. Like, what do you do even before you go to start vet school? Like, you should start thinking about student loan debt, right? But we're meeting people, practicing veterinarians who've been practicing. They're 30, 35, 40, 45 years old, still with a pretty substantial amount of debt. I mean, it's very common. So what can you speak to them? What's the 40-year-old, 45-year-old with still student loan debt and 3 kids and a mortgage and 2 car payments? It's overwhelming.
it is overwhelming. And that's a really good question. I think and that just kind of emphasizes why it's important to have a plan early. But for those veterinarians that are, I don't know, mid 30s, 40s with kids and a practice and car payments and mortgages, the simple fix and maybe unpopular advice is to just pay more. So pay more than just the minimum payment to pay down that principal and see that burden disappear more quickly. I think people that are paying the minimum payment on, I don't know, $20,000 or $30,000 in student debts, it's really not that big of a deal. But when you're talking to upwards of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in student debt, just paying off the minimum payments, I mean, you're really not tackling the principle of the loan. And that's how you see some doctors out of school for 10, 20 years, and they're still paying off their student loans.
Yeah, because it's doubled, tripled, quadrupled because they're barely paying the interest payment. You're right. I mean, or they're not paying the interest payment, or they, haven't been paying at all,
Exactly.
when they didn't have to. So yeah, I love the success story of one of our clients. She always knew she wanted to be a veterinarian who knew she wanted to be a practice owner. Mm-hmm. That was what her goal was to do. A married couple, husband did something else, is in another industry. And they made the decision to live off of his paycheck, even with children. They,
right.
Live off of his paycheck, live lean, drive the used car, and she put her entire salary on the student loan. I mean, I just applaud that, and they knocked it out. And now she's a practice owner with a thriving business, and the sacrifice paid off in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very fortunate situation, and it's good to have the income and be able to just put everything into the business and into the student loans, and it all kind of goes back to having a plan.
Yes, it seems like we harp on that a lot on this podcast.
Yes, because we know it works.
Yeah, and it is what we live and breathe every day, because I think Matt and I both we're problem solvers. But really beyond that, the plan is, think of us as like your thinking partners. Mm-hmm. Like call us and say, how can we think through this? And when you talk it through with a professional who can help you put this into motion, there's such freedom in it. It's like you can see you're willing to take a sacrifice because you can see the end game. Where when veterinarians are just like, I don't want to think about it because it causes me anxiety and I don't want to deal with it. I'm not good with money. And they have this fear behind money and all this and that. They're avoiding the inevitable problem, and it's probably going to compound and be worse when they do actually are forced to deal with it.
Yep. Than
if they would just say, hey, you guys seem to know what you're talking about here. Would you talk this through with me? And we would love to have that conversation. No obligation. We just want to help people. I mean, we're really here to help the veterinarian community. So do not hesitate to call me or to call Matt and get time on our calendar. There's a link on our show notes for that. So we would love to do that.
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can wrap up. Or do you have anything else we missed talking about, Matt?
No, I think that's great. A great start. Just to kind of reiterate, have a plan. So of those steps, negotiations, negotiate a higher salary. You are the bargaining chip. There is a shortage of veterinarians. Use that to your advantage. Pay more than just the minimum payment to tackle that principle. Live below your means. Set a monthly budget. You have $1,000 coming in. Spend $1,000 on housing, expenses, food, etc., and then save $500. And then borrow as little as possible, understanding what you need to live on, and not taking those extravagant trips to Europe and so on, but just being a responsible borrower, and not digging a bigger hole than we need to. And then lastly, investments. I think this is an important topic that isn't really spoken about when talking about planning, but having a bucket of money that is working with you alongside you tackling your debt as well. And then lastly, just working with a planner as soon as possible. It can save you some major money in making mistakes in the long run. or avoiding those mistakes in the long run. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was a really, really good website that students should go to. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So students, if you just want an idea of what your payment plan will look like, how quickly you can pay it off, or what kind of income you need, you can go to studentloanplanner.com. It's a very useful tool just to get your mind around what those payments will look like and what kind of income you need to support that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Matt, for being on the show with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And to all you veterinarians, it doesn't matter if you're a vet student, a graduate, practicing vet, whether you're 25 or 45 or whatever, remember you're not alone in this financial safari. We're here to help you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So please share those with us. Reach out to us by email or phone or whatever. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you all. You did a very good job talking about student debt without mentioning the other D word in the conversation. So I'll just make it plain. Financial discipline.
There you go. It's something you have to learn.
it really is. It really is. And, you can go listen to, there are people out there, financial coaches, who will tell you the same thing. You just got to get your finances order, and you have to be a little bit disciplined about them.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about it in a way that didn't make it sound like I've been bad, so I have to be disciplined. It's just,
Right.
I did a good conversation. Good job with the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm sure there are some folks listening who would like to maybe reach out to you and have a further conversation, Marcia. How would they do that?
Yeah. So you can call our office. The number is 205-795-2013. And you can reach either Matt or myself here. Also, you can find my website at meetwithmarcia.com. And Marcia is Marcia. So meetwithmarcia.com. And of course, that'll be in our show notes.
That would be fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you very much. And listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen. We appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber already, please just hit the subscribe button. It's really easy. That way you don't miss another podcast, another episode of the podcast. It just will be delivered directly to you wherever you listen to this podcast. It's easy. And if you like it, we'd really humbly ask that you rate it and share it with your friends and help spread the word about the podcast. On behalf of Marcia and everybody at Making Hay, I'm Bill Tucker, urging you to go out and live your best life today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Making Hay podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at meetwithmarcia.com or give us a call at 205-795-2013. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Marcia Miller. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Marcia Miller or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives or RFG Advisory LLC, RFG Advisory or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.